academic pedigree is going to matter anywhere at all, because today I think it's going to be more on the skills that people bring to the table. And if they can do a job well, whether it is through their experience or through their learning or through being coached by somebody, as long as they can do the job well, I think it's going to bring them into the workforce. So I think these are three large changes which are going to force us to be able to look at things completely differently: the work, the workspace, and the workforce. We can talk about it as we go along. But obviously, this does mean that performance management as a whole is definitely going to undergo a huge temporal change. Go ahead, Uma.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Lekha, you've summed it up so well. There's hardly anything more left after what you and Sakaar have said. I think for industries like manufacturing, it is a big change. And it's like a reset button like never before or never even envisaged in the future. What does it mean to have a manufacturing organization doing a work from home? I think it's completely unimaginable. And yet, I think we've swam through this situation and swimming still, I would say. So I think the reset button is also for the kind of industries which never imagined they could go in this work model compared to the past. I think it's a reset button for a lot of other industries like service, hotel, service, etc. Till about 1 year, 6 months back or 8 months back, it seemed like the industry to invest in, considering the amount people were traveling across, for example, hospitality and service. And today they're grappling as to what is to be done. I think it's actually reset the whole world in many ways. And our own habits are going to change. So we are going to reset, push the reset button into our own lives. The way we are living, the kind of places, homes that we stay in, our homes won't be the same anymore. You will have a workspace within. Builders are already looking at houses which have got probably 2 workspaces within a house, considering there are 2 people who are working together. The way we go into the supermarket, the concept of supermarket, I'm not sure whether it's going to exist the way it is, because increasingly people would probably be happy to go back to the mom and pop stores and finish up the transaction in one place and get back, compared to these large supermarkets and things like that. Vacations are going to mean different things to people, right? So I think at a personal level, the whole life is a reset button pushed for us. And for industries, certain industries more than ever before. So I think that's what reset means. It means we have to push the reset button here first before anywhere else to see how we can adapt to it. So those are my 2 cents on the topic, Jayashree.
Okay. So now we talked about how.
Can I just react, Jayashree, to what Uma said?
Sure.
So, Uma, I like the fact that you spoke about a personal reset as well. And I think, yes, that has meant a huge change in the way in which we think, the way in which we behave. I do believe retail especially has undergone a metamorphosis completely. I think we are so comfortable now purchasing everything online that I doubt that, even retail is going to stay with the huge mega spaces that they have. Probably going to be, like I was doing a project for one of the companies that I was working with earlier, and when I'd gone across the UK, I found that most of the spaces there, the big stores were actually quite empty, much like what you find, in the big halls of Hyderabad. So very empty shops. And I asked what was the problem, and they said that the reason is that people just come in here to try the sizes, but they go online to finally clinch the purchase because they just save so much more, right? So we've really moved, even in retail, we've actually moved from bricks to clicks, right? And that has meant a complete different dimension to the way in which we are today living. I doubt how many of us are even going to the ATMs to draw out money. I think we've just got so comfortable being able to work through banks online and, through the Paytms of the world. It's just become so much easier not to have to stock things. Of course, it's a different thing that, you don't even feel like then going ahead and buying saris and jewelry any longer, which is very good for many of the men around, I'm sure. But, yes. So it has meant a lot of reset in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jayashree, maybe I just wanted to add one thing here, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
sure. Go ahead.
so this is one place, and I think Uma and Lekha brought this very well. With regards to online banking or online payment or cashless transactions, right? And this whole habit of doing online shopping because of the comfort of it. And I just love that phrase, Lekha, brick to click. I'll use it. I'm just telling you, I'll use it.
Please, that's not my
But
own. Go ahead.
a lot of people used to say that this pandemic has caught us unawares. And these are the two areas wherein I actually disagree with them. Somewhere we actually were prepared for it because as a society, we moved to this online shopping concept long ago. We moved to this cashless transaction or cashless banking or cashless payment thing long ago. What the pandemic is doing is that there are a few late adopters that I call them to any change. This pandemic has actually made those late adopters also to kind of move to this trend. But somewhere I think as human beings, I give ourselves the credit that we had the foresight wherein we moved towards this trend, and that's why the pandemic somewhere has not had that catastrophic impact. And I don't want to undermine the loss of life and everything, but it has not had a catastrophic impact on the society as such. And some businesses which had this foresight are surviving. Like today, if you need to buy a stock, go buy an Amazon stock. You'll be rich in a few months.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right.
So we talked about how it has changed our lives, our work, workspace, workforce. I like what Lekha said and what Uma talked about in terms of how it has even done a personal reset, and Sakaar talking about how the workspace is going to and how it is resetting the retail, the real estate as we see. So now coming to the point question is, what's the role HR is playing in this big reset? Because HR overnight had to think very differently, and even if the companies did not have HR in their business continuity planning, it became all of a sudden it became so important that HR needs to be part of the business continuity planning, right? So I want to hear from you, what's the role HR is playing, and both from a tactic point of view and from strategic with the big reset. What are you seeing?
Well, I'd like to start here. I think HR, like I said before, this has meant that HR is actually commanding the table now. It is not just searching for a space at the table any longer. So when you're looking at the BCP2, the business continuity planning, where earlier it was taking the direction from most of the business leaders about what needed to be done, I think today HR is quickly coming across and saying that this is really what we need to do. They're understanding what the business requires, and they're trying to see what the people need. And because it has meant a change for the people, it is HR that is really asking the business leaders to be able to change their way of working and being able to, whether it is online meetings, or it is empathy that needs to be shown to people, or it is about the emotional closeness that people need to bring through online working, or whether it is about continuity of work, or not looking at performance through attendance, for example. It's not just how long people are going to stay there. Managers have to go beyond just searching for the person online, and it's got to be more about trust and work and delivery. And I think HR therefore has had to really call the shots, and I love it, because to me that is HR today coming into its own. I'm not going to be too surprised to learn that it's going to be HR that is going to rule companies from now on. That's where I'd like to start, but I'm happy to allow the others to go into it, and then I'll come back again.
Yeah. So,
Sure. So, maybe I'll go next. I completely agree with Lekha. In the past 4 months, the amount of BCP calls and the enterprise resiliency calls that I've been in, I had not been on those calls in my first 10 years from the time I moved to human resources. In fact, easily 40% of my time now goes in these calls. And with regards to HR calling the shots, the biggest thing that I saw in our industry, which is very human capital intensive, is how you recruit. And the way the things have changed was where earlier we would actually insist on somebody coming into the office, giving a face-to-face interview. If you were remote, having a video interview. Companies have become so much more adaptive in that nature, because you just can't have somebody come into the office. Where people would earlier complain saying that I can't judge a candidate unless I see somebody in flesh and blood. They have figured out a way of judging a person over a video call, and they have figured out a way of judging a person over a phone call. And people earlier used to complain saying that over a phone call, I don't know if I'm talking to the same person that I'm hiring. Now you have trust, you're talking to the same person. So somewhere your inherent trust in human beings has gone up. Talk about the employee experience. Companies are so big these days on what's the employee experience during the interview process, what's the employee experience during the onboarding process, right? Even what is the employee experience during an exit process. Now, all these things have they've become a completely different paradigm, because how do you replicate the in-person experience to an online experience? How do you make sure that people are productive in the same amount of time that they would have been once they join a company if they were in person in the office? Onboarding, induction, all that has gone such a sea change. But surprisingly, what I've seen is that the employee experience has not dipped. So companies have inherently innovated in how they onboard people, still keeping the same experience.
True. Like you talked about the recruiting experience. Sorry, Uma, just add a point out here. You talked about the recruiting thing, and I think that's really valid, because today we have agencies and companies that are coming up with proctoring the experience of hiring itself, where we're able to ensure that the person is not taking help from somebody else. And, through the mode of VR as well as of AI, we can actually figure out who the person is that we're really talking to. Is there a change in his voice? And is he really representing the kind of competencies that we really are truly looking for? And what are the values that he expounds and so on? So I think it's really made a huge difference to the way in which we used to hire before. And that is what has become so exciting. Go ahead, Uma, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with both of you in what is changing. I think the year 2020 is going to be about health and caring for HR predominantly, because you need to be in the game to play the game. So I think the first effort is to make sure that people are okay and everything is working well, and people are adapting to the new style, etc. I think most companies, I'm not talking about the IT companies, but other companies have had a very severe hit on the P&L this year. And there are some signs of recovery, but it will never be like the previous years, right? It's going to be muted. So I think at this time, what is important is to pay attention to the right stuff. Keep your people together, keep the right people together. Have your talent management completely in place right now to ensure that you get into 2021 with the blitzkrieg speed that we are expected to do. So I think 2021, and as we transition to 2021, and a positive way of looking at it is it's just 6 months away. So 2021 is going to be about how to get business back on its track. And that's where HR is going to play a very, very important role, for which I believe you have to set the foundation from now. The talent management practices, identifying the right talent, whether you color code the talent or whichever way you want to do it, you really need to ring fence the right kind of people at this time, and have your performance management, rewards, recognition, everything centered to keeping the ones who matter. And I believe that, this might seem a little bit weird, because we may not sound very inclusive when I say this, but I think you really need to look at the 90th percentile employees in your organization at this stage, and they are the ones who are going to take you on that speedy journey that you're looking for. So the rest are going to be there. As we know, every organization has got 70% of necessary people who actually carry the organization along, but you need that 20% people who are going to really make that difference. So look for people in the 90th percentile, make sure they are in the right assignments at this time, make sure that you're shuffling them to the right things to be done at this time, make sure you have the right cross-functional team set up quickly with key themes. For example, reset could be a theme, reimagining the future could be a theme. These are some of the things we're doing, so others would also be doing some things like that. But get those themes very clear and get your right people engaged in it. If you lose their mind share at this stage, they're not even in front of you physically. I see a lot of people are getting jobs and moving on, even at this stage.
Right.
What people imagine. It's not that, people are happy sitting at home earning the salary at the end of the month. No, I mean, people are looking for something else and nice ways of being engaged and actually contributing in a very challenging way. So I suppose, we really, HR, will need to look at very hard at its talent practices. And that's what is going to be the future for us. So from sharing, caring, to if you have to move to the other side of bringing the business back, I think a lot of work has to be done. I'm really happy to share that, we've done a lot of assessment centers during this. In the last 3 months, we've done a lot of assessment centers. We have identified key talent. We have created a pool of 30, 40 people who are ready to take on higher responsibilities should there be a need. And now we're working on the development plans to ensure that we're giving them the inputs that they need. So a good individual, a contributing individual, if they feel that they are engaged in the right way, there's a higher chance that you will have them running like never before when the time comes to perform in that way. So I think this is going to be very important for us. So caring, of course, please take care of people. But number 2, please give a hard look at your talent. Because if you don't do it now, you will never get the time to do it when you start running. And at
Very
that time,
nice.
you're going to find
Absolutely. So I think that's wonderful, the way in which you put it. The fact is that it's not a holiday for India, for HR at all, in my opinion. And like you said, I think this is the time for HR to really come to the forefront and do whatever they need to do. It's also going to be one of those times where we need to also look at the companies who are, letting go of job offers right now. They're saying, okay, we can't get you on board right now because we don't know what the business is going to hold for us in the future. But I believe that we need to have the stickiness with the talent, especially if they're really good, to be able to get them, or at least keep them engaged in some way or the other. Perhaps give them some kind of a part salary or something to be able to keep them with us, because when you suddenly do need them, you're not going to be able to find them. The other thing also is coming back to the point of recruiting. I do believe that we are going to find, with the new kind of work space that we are looking at, you're going to find a difference in a much larger workforce to hire from, because suddenly women are going to come into the fray, because today they're not going to be just sitting at home. Today they can work from home, and they're probably the most confident in working from home and being able to manage to home and hearth together. I also believe people with disabilities will definitely come back into the workforce, and because we were finding it very difficult to get them into the workforce and trying to make sure that the workspace is going to be amenable to them. But I think this way you are going to be able to find that they are also going to be coming into the running very soon. So it's actually a challenging time for HR to be able to look at people we would like to retain, at the same time not letting go of the people who really work, the soldiers in the company. You've got to be able to be sticky for them as well. So that bonding will need to be there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that leads to my next question. What rules are we breaking? What are the norms, policies which had existed before? How HR is breaking those to work for the new normal?
Could I take that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things is you have to really look at your organization structure in a very, very revolutionary way compared to the way you've done it. You may have had the luxury of having so many business lines, service lines, etc. happening. Today, with the pressure on cost, you will really need to break all those paradigms and look for a structure which is fit for purpose today and in the near future. And when things go good, you can always experiment with other structures. But today, however disruptive it sounds, and by the way, when you get down to doing it, it's very disruptive. People have gotten used to their fiefdoms, teams, hierarchies, and then you're trying to break that and merge things together, and then people become suddenly nobody in their head from where they were. It's going to be very disruptive, but I think this is something a good organization has to do immediately. Change that structure, cut the lines so that the decision making is much faster, because today the need of the hour is to make decisions very quickly and get to what you want to with the least amount of cost and bureaucracy, both of it. So I think that is going to be first breaking the rule in my view. Second, breaking the rule is what has happened to industries like ours, having the work from home. This was never a possibility if things would have been normal. Right? But really, this COVID uncle has to be thanked a lot, or auntie, whatever it is, because it's changed the way things are looked at. And I think it's such a pleasure, amidst a lot of panic, I would say, that, we've actually understood the value of doing something like this. And this is, as Lekha mentioned, is going to open the vistas and doors for a lot of other people to actually look. What about people with disability? Today, they can do as much. Every time in manufacturing, disability, well, it is taken like a quota, but not with the complete acceptance. But today, what does it matter? Who you are and how you are. When you're sitting behind the screen, you can do everything. In fact, people who are visually handicapped are also doing fantastic work. So I think it breaks all paradigms of what normal people are and what other people are and things like that. But that's another rule that you're going to break. The third rule I believe you're going to break is you are going to look at your employment models very differently. You know, a traditional industry has never looked at any other model other than a full-time hire. So today, a part-time gig, looking at a pool of people who can give you expertise outside of the organization. I think all of this is happening now. And this was something which is totally unenvisaged earlier. And I think that is going to be very good, because if you want to play with your fixed cost in the same way that you have been doing forever, you can never head anywhere in life. You know, you have to change the paradigm at looking at your cost and the way you're stacked up. So I think these are really the big ticket ones that is going to be. And fourth one is Lekha, actually mentioned earlier, your performance management are going to undergo a complete change. You know, it is going to be shorter in cycle. And I'm talking of industries like ours. We always believed in annual cycle. Unlike the IT, which, experimented with all kinds of things of quarterly and half yearly. And I've been through those cycles. So I think now manufacturing is going to have shorter appraisals. People are available. That's the biggest breakthrough. You know, the person has no choice but to come online at an assigned time. In a physical space, you will always say, oh, I'm caught up here and I'm caught up there. And accountability was slipping through all this. But today with this medium, accountability has gone up like anything. And people who don't know to work with their own hands are really going to suffer. Everybody who had the habit of delegating it down to 10 people and, going back and showing this presentation as if it's done by them, I think they're going to have a very tough time, because this medium is cruel. It's not going to wait forever for you to get back and, get in touch with somebody, have that discussion in front. So I think the fourth rule that gets broken is our own way of completely changing the way we're working.
True. And I think in addition to the points that you've raised, Uma, one more thing that's going to happen is, in my opinion, we're going to have people who are going to be cross-specializing. We're not going to be having specialists any longer. I think you are going to be forcing people to be able to get trained in various other dimensions of the workforce needs, because you don't know where people might be required. And I think this is a good time for them to be able to see whether they had been slotted in the wrong place at all. The sixth point that I'd like to add to the four that you've already done is, I think, also attendance. You know, the way in which we've marked attendance is definitely going to, again, change. It's not going to be on physical, presence any longer. It's really going to be on the delivery of a project or a task more than anything else that people are going to be checked on. So I think, even leave, for instance, the leave regulations that we've had till now, I think the US has already brought out a COVID Act. I think it was released somewhere in April, on the way in which it's going to influence the way of working for companies after COVID. And I think one of those very major areas there is about leave. Because I see that, in the circles, in the HR circles, people are actually asking, okay, when do we give people leave? And, do we give leave, or do we ask them to stay at home? Because they could be a problem for us. So is it forced leave? Do I account for it against his annual leave? Do I give him leave because he has to support somebody who's ill at home, or if he is ill himself? What is the kind of action that we need to take? I think the lack of clarity there is forcing people to just throw the attendance sheet out of the window, in my opinion, and leaves out of the window, and start thinking more with the heart, more than, with all the faculties of policies and procedures. And you've got to stop that pushing of pens, and I think start hearing with the heart more than anything else.
So if I may just add there, I agree with all the 6 points that, Lekha and Uma mentioned. From the industry that I have been in all my life, these these disruptions were already happening. With regards to, flexible work hours. We talked about flexible work hours. We talked about, performance management, wherein we were doing collaborative goal setting. We were doing talent reviews every quarter. Even the goals were not set annually. Goals were set for quarterly, and people would actually change goals, change measurements against those goals. So the difference that I see now is that earlier, when we were asking the business to move in that direction, it was actually considered breaking the rules. It was actually, there was a lot of resistance that we were facing from managers in the organization, from the employees, because everybody would see it from their point of view. What this pandemic has done for us is it has actually expedited that path. It is not called breaking the rules anymore. It's actually called defining the rules now. So, again, as I said, I was doing a podcast for somebody, a few months ago, and that's what I said there. I said, everything is not gloom and doom. And again, I never want to undermine the fact that there are people losing their life, and there is no replacement for loss of life, and it's very sad. But from a business perspective, there are a lot of things that businesses wanted to do. Uma talked about org structures. In the IT industry, people have been talking about flatter organizations for a very long time. And everything now, because of this pandemic, is being expedited because you want faster decision making, you want timely decision making, and it can only happen when you've got flatter organizations. So somewhere, somebody asked, there was a joke on WhatsApp which asked that who drove digitalization in your organization, and the answer was COVID.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
Yeah. I think digitization, AI in hiring, for instance, where we're talking of virtual realities to allow people to see the culture for themselves without actually ever coming into the office. So I think there's been so much. I think the fantastic way in which even employee engagement has been working online. You're just managing to bond with people which you probably never had the chance to do earlier. And there are lots of jokes about it, of course, with HR getting the brunt of the stick about having to now sing songs online, and wife is wondering, are you really working? And is this what you've always done, when you stayed long hours kind of thing? But yeah, I think, there's been a lot of change in the way in which we've thought. And it's a very exciting time. But I think really that this is the time to show that empathy and, not to just give lip service any longer. I think, HR is so good at saying the right thing, but not really feeling the right thing. And then we start drawing these boxes around people to say, this is how you will act, and this is not how you will act. And how can I give you this leverage? What's going to happen to the others? But I think, we've now got to start thinking differently. Like, for instance, the insurance for employees. What are we covering? You are coming from the financial sector, Sakaar, so we are saying that what is it that we're doing to be able to even give loans to our employees? I mean, to go through this. I was even considering that maybe it's time for us to even think of not even having just monthly salaries at the end of the month. Maybe we'll have to go the weekly salary route to allow people to have more money in hand. To be able to give them not just a directory of, okay, which are the hospitals to go to, but who they can call for help. I think emotional counseling, stress busting, I think you need to be able to focus on that a lot more. So I think the heart part, while the mind of HR has always been there and the hands have always been there, like we said, coming to the table and looking at BCP, I think this is the time now for the hearts to be shown. And HR is best at that. I mean, we are skilled at that, and we should be able to really now move with our hearts and hands.
Yeah, definitely. And I think now let's take some questions from the audience to this wonderful panel who have been talking. So let's see, Sabah, can you?
Yeah, so there are two questions posted here. So there's one from Mr. Chakradhar. So Mr. Chakradhar, if you want to unmute yourself.
And video and ask.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
So two quick questions any of the panelists can answer. But before I ask the questions, I've sent the panelists a LinkedIn request. I hope you'll accept it. The questions are...
Good networking.
What new things should we be doing with new industry entrants, especially the GETs type of thing? And I'm worried about it because I just been in the industry side for a long time, and I went into the academy side, and that gap is even worse when I look at it from the other side. That's the first question. The second question is, how should industry support startup ventures? And I'm seeing that the universities are doing a terrible job there as well without, and industry support is crucial for making these startups work. Thank you.
Okay, so let me take part of that, and then I'll allow the others to come in as well. Chakrita, thank you for a very interesting question. But I think you're absolutely right. Now that you've moved into academia, and that happened to me some time back, like I told you that I've always been teaching as well. I think one of the things that I found is this huge gap between finally what we want people to be when they come into industry and what the universities are churning out. And I think that is not just a COVID time. This has been something which we have experienced over the last few years. It's just become more in the face right now, right? I mean, you can actually see it very, very clearly today because today, remember, everybody is going online. So, you know, if universities and colleges are still going to be focusing on concepts and talking from yellowed textbooks and, you know, yellowed notes, it's just not going to work. I think this generation, who we call the Generation Z, who are in colleges right now, in my opinion, they are people who are, you know, the true digital natives, right? They know how to go ahead and they know how to go ahead and learn whatever they need to learn, pick up whatever they need to pick up from wherever. So if a faculty member is going to go and just talk about concepts to them, it just doesn't make sense. I think that's where the faculty members have to be able to use industry to be able to get those examples right into the classroom and allow that experiential learning to build the skill set, not just the knowledge bank, but the skill set of those people to be able to go there and solve problems. In fact, I would go one step ahead and I would say that today the time has come where we are not only looking for problem solving capabilities, but we're looking for people to find the problems first. Because people don't even know that they are in a problem, right? So you've actually got to have this crystal ball defining kind of a tactic where, you know, you've got to be able to say, okay, this is where there could be a problem and people haven't realized it yet. And I think, you know, much like the Apple, you know, founder had stated, it's about knowing what people want without them knowing what they want themselves. And I think that's the phase where, you know, faculty and institutes have to move from textbooks to looking at experiential learning, about case studies, about real life, and don't prepare students for today. Please prepare students for tomorrow, which means that you yourself need to be a kind of a soothsayer of the future. So I believe that, yes, this is a huge gap that we find between industry and, you know, the graduates of today. And there are plenty of studies that have actually proved that. So I hope I've answered that part of your question, Chakradhar. I'll allow Sakaar and Uma to talk about the second half, and then I'll come in there again, where you also spoke about industry supporting startups.
So if I may, I'll just add one more thing.
Go ahead,
with regards to what companies were expecting of fresh college graduates. You know, it was typically about, you know, technical knowledge, bringing that fresh blood into the organization, coming and challenging the status quo. You know, I used to tell our fresh college graduates, I said, bring your naughtiness to the corporate as you come from the campus. You know, what's surprising is that one more thing that we have added to that is dealing with uncertainty. Back in those days, it was something which was reserved for managers, saying that you deal with the uncertainty and you protect your team from that. In today's world, and I think somebody said that you know, the pandemic has brought everybody to the same level. Everybody now is expected to deal with uncertainty at their own level. And this was the biggest thing, you know, wherein companies are now talking to the college graduates. And you know, back in March, when companies do summer internship, a lot of companies which were actually wondering how would we do internship now, because these fresh college graduates who have never worked in a production environment, you know, would react to it. And the thought that came was that when these college graduates come and join you full time in July, you'll face the same problem. So why don't you actually run virtual internships, which would be a dress rehearsal? Companies would learn on what to do differently when your full time graduates come and join you in July. So that's also one big shift that the companies have faced, wherein somebody who's never worked in their life before, they just come and work in a virtual world right away.
True. In fact, the way in which they've been doing internships has completely changed. Even the summer internships, you know, I mean, earlier we were wondering whether it's risky to be able to send our students out to companies to be able to work there. But now we find that they're quite comfortable in actually looking at surveys and assignments online and being able to, you know, improve systems from their desktops with the help of the faculty. So I think it's actually been a much better value add for the companies also. There's not so much of interference on the floor, but at the same time, the work value add does get done. That's right. Go ahead, Uma.
Okay, let's, Sabah, can you ask the next question?
One second, then can we answer his second question? He had a question also about,
sure.
Yeah, he had a second question about how industries are actually supporting startups.
Yes.
And I think, Chakradhar, you'll see a lot of mentoring activity that is there in companies to be able to support startups that are starting from within, right? So we've got the intrapreneurship that is there from within the company itself, where in many companies, I myself have started that process, where I've allowed people to come up with ideas which is going to be, let's say, of social value. And, they take 70% of the IP, the company keeps 30% of the IP, but we give them the time off to work with people who are skilled enough to be able to bring that. So that's why you're talking about it internally. But we also have a lot of CEOs who are very happy to be able to spend their time in mentoring them. So whether it is under the auspices of TIE and many other such, areas, you are finding people coming and helping out the youngsters to be able to face challenges. And in the process, learning about what youngsters are facing today, which could be very different from the way in which they had faced it some time back. So it's actually a mutual learning, a lot of reverse engineering that's going into play here as well. So it's a very exciting field for startups. I know because 2 or 3 of the startups that I'm mentoring myself are in that field where, they're very happy to be able to share their challenges and learn from the way in which we had done it in our time and what they need to do in the future as well. So there is a lot of that happening. A very good sharing experience. Would you like to add anything, Sakaar, Uma?
No, I think
no more. Yeah. No.
Yeah. Okay, let's take the next question.
Okay, so we have Kanti next. Kanti, if you can unmute yourself. Okay, so, I'll read out the question. It's what can be the role and contribution of HR in handling the mental, emotional trauma, stress and pressure that employees and also HR team members are undergoing because of these changes, the increase in the workload, unfixed work schedule hours and no work-life balance? So that's the question.
Uma, you can start because I think you're doing the maximum about it right now.
Yes. Yeah. So, Sakaar, do you want to take it? I can follow you.
Sure. So, with regards to, handling the emotional trauma, what companies are doing these days is that they are doing a lot of work with the managers in terms of, helping the managers on how to actually remain in touch with their employees, throughout this journey. Companies are also talking about how to help. They're conducting courses for employees and managers together on how to actually define work hours in this work from home time when, the laptop is in front of you and you have the temptation to go and work at any point of time. Companies are looking at their employee assistance program in a totally different way now, wherein there are numbers where people can call and, share their concerns with regards to any emotional trauma that they're going. And the biggest thing companies are doing around that is actually making people aware that mental health is as important as physical health. Calling a counselor to talk about things is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong in it. There are senior leaders in the organization who are making themselves more vulnerable by talking about their insecurities in this work from home time so that employees feel comfortable voicing those out. I've seen companies where senior leaders are actually writing blogs about, what they are doing in this time. Talking about work-life balance, there's a new term which has come up now, which is called staycation. People are saying, where are you going for vacation? I'm staying home for vacation, right? It is not about teasing people on what you're doing on your vacation. It's more about telling people that it's okay to take time off because mental well-being is as important. And just because you can't step out of your house doesn't not mean that you can't take a vacation. Vacation means breaking the monotone. Go just stay home. Work from home or work from anywhere has actually broken that rule. It seems as if you're staying in the office right now. So take the time off and stay home, away from the work. So companies are doing all these things wherein senior leadership is leading by example, showing people on how to do these things, making themselves vulnerable so that employees can actually be open and comfortable in voicing their vulnerabilities.
So I'll just take the follow-up piece in terms of how HR teams need to cope up. Because, HR is not God. they're also going through the same situation as everybody else is. And so it's very important for people managers in the HR function to actually rise to the occasion and connect more with their team and give them the confidence that, yes, it's a tough time, but we also have the onerous responsibility of actually taking the organization through. I think it's about what sense of purpose and mission that you fill with people with that actually helps them to perceive their role and their life in a particular manner. Some examples are like, for example, even if it's very difficult for me to do this every day, I have an everyday morning meeting with the team. And it is very demanding because there are many other things that are waiting. But then this 45 minutes has to be with the team, right? And you have to connect with them, not just connecting. What we do is we put them into a lot of assignments and projects so that they don't have so much of time to ruminate about what's happening and things like that, right? And then I also make it a point to highlight their work to the senior guys so that they know that what kind of support they're giving to their team members at this time. So, that sense of purpose gets very elevated when you actually pitch it in the right way. And the second thing is,
if I may interrupt a minute here, Sakaar has to leave for his call. So I just want to thank Sakaar for being here as part of the panel and having taken the questions and taking time out of your schedule to be part of it. Thank you again. And I look forward to continued relationship with you in DisruptHR. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jayashree.
Lovely to have been here with you, Sakaar.
Thank you, Sakaar.
We'll connect.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lekha, Uma, Saba, Jayashree. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Thank you, Sakaar. Bye.
Yeah.
Sorry, Uma. Continue.
No problem. And just to close my point, I think the people leaders within HR function also need to let their hair down a bit, not stand on protocol completely all the time. You also need to have moments of fun and lightheartedness with the team so that they, that's the closest they can get to a personal interaction and have this. So, you don't need to switch your video on all the time, but when you start the meeting for 10 seconds, have the video on so that you're connecting at a, physical level with everybody. And then you give them these tasks and then you highlight the work that we do. And then, take it to the topmost guys. Then, they feel really charged. It's like a soldier on the battlefield. At least that's been my experience.
Right.
The other way is to let them do their bit and leave them to their work. But that is not very effective in this time.
Right. And I think also, reaching out. I think HR also needs to go a step further. Reach out to people who otherwise do not come to you. And just ask them how are they doing and, are things okay? And, ask them about the families. Connect with the families online too. It doesn't matter if it's a nagging mother-in-law who's behind, it's fine. But, it's important to be able to connect with the families and let them know that their ward or their family member is in a company that really cares about all of them. I think that's very important. That bridging of the gap between the workplace and the family is something that can really be done. So it's something that, in my opinion, is easier to do now during the pandemic than otherwise. Take the pandemonium out of pandemic, which is the most important thing. In my opinion, that's where HR should really head. Remove that feeling of, being on this wheel that you don't know where the wheel is going to stop and whether it's going to allow you to get off or not. I think that's where HR can give that sense of stability and calm to people to say, we're there for you and we're here with you. So I think that's a very, very important part that I would like to stress, that all HR should really begin to reach out to everyone. I like that first thing that you stated also, Uma, about, having twin offices at home. And I really think, probably HR needs to start looking at communities with shared office spaces as well, for their people. So they don't even need to be inside the house, but they can be in the clubhouse in a shared office space, or look for what we call, instead of 2 BHK, 2 BHOK, with an office also involved. But I think, talking like that about problems that people are having, or sharing easy to do recipes where, let's say the, stores aren't stocking fresh vegetables and you're in the middle of a lockdown. What are the kind of recipes that people are looking at? Getting on your own COVID, recipe book online for people. I think things that you can actually identify and put yourselves in the shoes of the people who are undergoing that. Like I heard of one of the companies, it doesn't come to mind right now, but one of the companies in India, very much in Hyderabad, in fact, had actually given out a loan to, not a loan, a subscription to Byju's Learning Academy to help parents train their children or school their children at home, which, is such a nice thinking feeling that somebody is thinking about it. So the schools may be all online, but here is something that I can get my child engaged in other ways to be able to continue to be. So I think, that's where I meant that thinking with the heart.
Sabha, we will.
So we have another question.
And we'll stop with this, the last question for the day. And,
sure. Juhi, if you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, panelists. It was a pleasure listening to all three of you, and such articulation and wonderful ideas and information that you have shared. I have a question, in terms of how the organizations will be going for the hybrid work arrangements, and how will it impact the morale of the entire workforce, with some people working from home and some coming to office on a rotational basis. So yeah, your views on that, please.
So let me start with that, because this is something that, especially in the IT sector, we had been ruminating about it a great deal. I think this is a way of the future. You are going to find, you've already heard some companies making announcements about so much percentage of their workforce are going to be permanently working from home. And a lot of them have stated that nobody needs to come to work throughout the year 2020, for instance, and so on. So I do believe that this is a way of the future. You are going to find people being more comfortable working from home. And it's okay. Like I said, that as long as the delivery of the work gets done, I think managers and companies are going to be thinking differently. About the morale of the people, yes, there has been, there are a few considerations that we need to take in place, which is about the engagement of people and the fact that, the loyalty factor might actually go down if they don't find the bonding. And that's why we said HR needs to be able to commit to greater engagement that is there online with people. I also believe that, you might have a person actually taking on 2 or more jobs, so that gig worker concept might come in, and you might have this policy of no dual employment also going out of the window in future, which is okay. And I think that's the way to deal with it. But yes, when a person does decide to leave the organization, they've got to think of it as value add for the company time, the tenure that they have been with the company. So I think blended workspaces, blending work philosophies are here to stay, and will actually enhance the work life, in my opinion. I wouldn't even call it work-life balance. It's not a balance any longer, but I do believe it will be a choice that people are making. And I believe that this is something that is going to help people to be able to run both parts of their lives a lot better, smoother.
Okay.
Jayashree, I just had an input.
Yes, please.
I just had an input. So Juhi, I think this is a real issue. And I'll tell you why. Because people who will be working from home all the time will find that the social connect will be missing largely. And that is definitely bound to impact their morale. It's not going to be very easy. And in fact, today we were discussing the same thing, saying, some people are going to be in the office, so they have FaceTime with the people. And there are others who have no FaceTime. So I think it is not a very simple question to answer, saying that nothing is going to happen. I think it is definitely going to impact the morale of the workforce, which is not in the workplace. Secondly, I think a lot of sensitivity is required working in a hybrid model. So if I have 5 people in front of me, I can easily be swayed by looking at those 5 people in front and not be mindful of the 5 who are online. Right. And I think the first thing that we are doing now in the organization is, creating a list of those do's and don'ts in a hybrid working model, and training the people as to how they should be sensitive to all the people who are part of this exercise. Today, there is no disparity because everybody is online. But tomorrow, when you go physically to a workplace in parts, it's going to have an impact, clearly. So the morale of the people who are working from home is impacted, you also mustn't have a situation where the same set of people will go to the office all the time, because they also are going to suffer a lot, thinking that the ones who are at home are more privileged than the ones who are coming to work.
Got to be a
And I think
rotation.
that is something that you need to be very conscious of and be very sensitive to ensure that everybody gets their chance, and be a little more lenient to people who are coming to the physical workspace because they have to travel and things like that and come. So in general, a lot more sensitivity is expected, and some kind of training is expected to be given to people to manage this. Please don't expect people to just get good at it without any kind of inputs. That's not going to happen at all. Today's situation is very different because it's all online. But with the hybrid, I think it's going to change over there. So really, Juhi, not a simple problem, but I think, you know, you will have to bite it piece by piece.
And it is here to stay, but you've just got to be able to do something that we could. Yeah, that's right. You know, I just like to end with one point, Jayashree, and I think thank you so much for this opportunity. It's a wonderful topic that you chose and goes so well with the theme of Disrupt HR. I especially like the fact that, you know, this comes at a time when you're able to shine the spotlight on HR and, you know, bring HR up to the surface. And I hope it gives a lot of hope to people who are listening to us that, you know, HR is the future. And also this process shredder, you know, that you've actually brought into our minds, that we've got to be able to just take something hard and rub the barnacles off the bottom of the boat that we're sailing on to be allowing the organization to move forward a lot smoother.
Right.
So I think it's a wonderful topic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lekha. Thanks, Uma, and thanks, Sakaar. And you have been such a wonderful panel. We can continue talking, and our audience also has been wonderful with their questions. Thank you all. And this is the first of the series. So we will continue to come back with more such interesting topics, disrupting HR. And I look forward to have a very good relationship with you in terms of Disrupt HR and you. So we hope to see you soon again on our panel discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jayashree, and please keep disrupting. We need more disruption.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
So
Thank you, Sabha.
Thanks.
Thank you so much to the audience as well. Lovely to have seen so many people whom I know out here. So
absolutely,
all the best to you. Hope to see you people rise and shine.
Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.